Thank you everyone for joining. We have Dean Baumgardner from Memorial United Church of Christ in Fitchburg.
Hello everyone, I'm Dean Baumgardner, a lay member of the Memorial United Church of Christ in Fitchburg, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Madison. Our project is not unlike the sisters' project. It's much smaller than their project, but much bigger than you'd put on a individual private home. We started our project 2 years ago in the spring of 2018 and finished it in August of 2018. So it's been operating for about 2 years for us. Our church is about 200 members. We've always had a strong focus on environmental stewardship. We have a 4 to 5 acre woods behind the building that has been designated as an urban wildlife sanctuary by the Nature Conservancy. We've done an energy audit on the building. We converted all of our lighting to LED and fluorescent lighting. Have had a long-term recycling program. So we have a strong focus on the environment. Our utility is Madison Gas and Electric, has similar programs, feed-in tariffs that the sister was talking about with Alliant Energy. Our building was constructed in 1988, and turns out our roof, our buildings looks like a pyramid. You can probably see the roof over my shoulder in the background. And one side of that pyramid is south facing with a very steep slope. So it was just ideal for solar. As I mentioned, we started a project in 2018. It took about 6 months from concept to completion. Our project is 21.6 kilowatts. And on the screen, you'll see a little P after the kilowatts. That means that's the size of it for direct current, like if it was operating a battery. But you have to convert that, as the sister said, to alternating current to run your lights and your electrical appliances. And so there are inverters that do that. So if you see a certain capacity, like 21 kW, that would be alternating current, the amount you can actually use. But if you have the little P behind it, that's the direct current before it's been converted to AC. And you lose a little bit of power in that conversion process. So we sized our project to meet about 90% of our energy needs. Madison Gas and Electric, our utility, needed to approve the project, the size of it. They preferred that we didn't produce more than we needed. We do have a bi-directional meter, similar to the sisters, that can run both directions. And at times we do feed power back into the MG&E grid, but their preference is to just keep our power internally for our own needs. We have 72 photovoltaic panels on our roof. Each panel is 300 watts. We used a Canadian company, Canadian Solar, for the panels, and a US company, Solar Edge, for the inverters and other related equipment. And we used a Madison-based contractor, Midwest Solar Power, for the installation. One of the interesting things we did was install a television monitor right inside our front doors in our narthex, where everybody can see it. And that shows real-time energy use. It graphs the amount of energy being produced at that point in time and shows the historical trends. It also shows how much carbon dioxide we're offsetting, how much coal we're offsetting, and those type of things. So it's an educational tool, and almost every Sunday or when people enter the building, they look at that monitor to see how the panels are doing. The installation, once we had all the approvals, the installation went quite quickly, and it took about a week. The panels were carried up on the roof. They were mounted about 4 inches off of the roof on rails, and we didn't even nearly fill up all the roof with the panels that we needed. As I mentioned, the power has to be converted from DC power to AC power, and that takes inverters. here's a picture of the inverters, which get mounted inside your building in like a utility room or near your electrical box. Our project cost just under $50,000, about 2.3 cents per watt. We applied for and received a grant from Renew Wisconsin under their Solar for Good program. And we also received a $4,000 grant from Focus on Energy. Focus on Energy is a consortium of the Wisconsin utilities. At least it's an organization that's funded by the Wisconsin utilities. So that left us with a little over $35,000 that we had to come up with on our own. Now, we could have went out and gotten a loan, and there's a number of different ways we could have raised the money, but we decided to do a capital campaign, and it was an easy sell to our congregation. Having our environmental focus, people got behind this, and within 2 weeks, we raised $40,000. That allowed us to, whenever we do a capital campaign at Memorial, we tithe 10% to our endowment fund, which is used for outreach ministries to nonprofits in the Madison area. So we raised a little bit more than we needed, and so we were able to tithe that 10% to our endowment fund. So we started out with zero cost for the entire system. So the savings from the solar energy production went right to our bottom line of our budget each year. As I mentioned, Renew Wisconsin has a program called Solar for Good. It's funded by the Couillard Solar Foundation, and it's targeted for nonprofit organizations. The next application, they're accepting them on October 1st. So now would be the perfect time to start working on an application for that October deadline. They provide grants up to $10,000 for small projects that are under 75 kilowatts. For larger projects over 75 kilowatts, you can receive up to $20,000. One of the requirements is that you have an outside consultant do a feasibility study. And we used a group out of Madison called Solar Connection to do our feasibility study. It was a simple process, relatively inexpensive. I think we were charged about $400 for that. In fact, I think Renew Wisconsin helped fund a portion of that feasibility study. But the feasibility study looks at your site, your building, where best to place the panels, if your roof configuration is proper, or if not, where you might want to place them on your property so that it avoids shadowing from trees and other buildings. And as I mentioned, we received a Focus on Energy grant, and that's from the Wisconsin utilities. And that's almost a given. If you install your project and your contractor applies for it, those funds are fairly easy to receive. Some of the benefits, it tied directly into our environmental stewardship ministry. Over the last 2 years, it's generated 51 megawatts of electricity. We've avoided 36,000 kilograms of CO2 being emitted into the atmosphere. That's the equivalent of burning about 27 tons of coal. It'd be the equivalent of planting 600 trees that would absorb that amount of CO2. It's also helped offset about the use of 12 million gallons of water that would be used at a coal plant if that energy had been generated using fossil fuels. The solar also helps reduce other pollutants that are generated from fossil fuels like SO2 and nitrous oxide and mercury. So at Memorial Church, we're saving about $3,600 annually in our utility bill. And that, again, goes right to our bottom line, since the entire system was paid for by grants and member contributions. Few things to remember. Orientation and pitch of your roof is important, or having an open site like in order to mount them on the ground. Checking for obstructions. You don't want shadows to be cast from trees and towers and other buildings at different times of year. It's because the sun's much lower, as you know, during the winter than it is when it's almost directly overhead in the summer. And for each organization, you really need to balance whether You're doing it because it's just the right thing to do environmentally, or you're actually looking for a payback. Had we not had our member contributions pay for this system, we would have had about a 10-year payback had we had to borrow funds to do the installation. And it's important to hire a reputable contractor. Check references, make sure that contractor's worked with your local utility so they know what the utility expects. Again, the utility has to approve the sizing, they have to install a bidirectional meter, and they have to commission the system for you to make sure it's not going to negatively impact the broader utility system once it's operating. So it's been a wonderful experience for Memorial United Church of Christ, and we strongly recommend others to get involved in solar. Thank you.
Great story. Thank you very much. So with that, thank you very much for joining. This has been recorded and will be posted on our website, wisconsingreenmuslims.org. And thank you very much for joining, and be active. And as I mentioned, this is a really good time to share your story in support of renewable energy and solar. So let's do that collectively.